Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. There's breaking news right now in the scandal that is engulfing Fox News. More audio has been unearthed, which we have here exclusively, of one of the channel's primetime hosts using a homophobic slur, also calling the people of Iraq, and I quote here, semi-literate primitive monkeys, for whom he had, quote, zero sympathy because they, quote, don't use toilet paper or forks. There's also some pretty racially gross things said about Barack and Michelle Obama. The audio just broke. We'll play that for you shortly. There's never been in modern American life a single media outlet more important to a presidency than Fox News is for Donald Trump. Trump literally watches it all day. He live tweets Fox and Friends, or sometimes on delay because he DVRs it. He sends advertisements for it. It forms his ideas, and they run interference for him. And it is impossible to know, really, where one ends and the other begins. Less than a week ago, disgraced Fox News executive Bill Shine was the White House communications director before he got turfed out. So if the president sits down at Mar-a-Lago on a Saturday night for an opinion on what's going on in the world, this is the kind of thing he might see.
Omar wears a hijab, which according to the Quran 33:59 tells women to cover so they won't get molested. Is her adherence to this Islamic doctrine indicative of her adherence to Sharia law, which in itself is antithetical to the United States Constitution?
Is her religious devotion antithetical to the U.S. Constitution? Great question. The on-its-face bigoted comment is not at all out of step for the rest of the rhetoric at Fox News, where anti-Muslim bigotry is a part of the routine programming. The network said in a statement, quote, "We strongly condemn Jeanine Pirro's comments about Representative Ilhan Omar. They do not reflect those of the network, and we have addressed the matter with her directly." Pirro, for her part, said, quote, "I did not call Representative Omar un-American. My intention was to ask a question and start a debate, but of course, because one is Muslim does not mean you don't support the Constitution." She's just asking questions, people, just putting forward ideas to discuss, like, for instance, Tucker Carlson does. He's always really just asking questions, not defending anything, just asking questions.
Look, I'm not defending Trump. I disagree with what he did today. President Trump said what he said on the tape. Sure. I'm not defending it. I'm not defending white supremacy. I don't believe in it. I don't approve of it. You're not going to put me in a position to defend the ugliness of a lot of the things online. I'm not defending the creepiness on the internet. I hate it, just like you do.
He does not defending the thing that he's defending. Of course, everyone knows what Tucker is doing when he says this, including white supremacists, who in recently leaked chats are praising Carlson for how he injects ideals of white nationalism into the discourse through this sort of cowardly disassociation with his own views. But Carlson's been doing this shtick forever. Media Matters has unearthed comments that Carlson made on Shock Jock radio program between 2006 and 2011 about, among many other things, when child rape is okay and defensible. You can tell from listening that they are not made in jest.
Well, actually, he's not in prison for that. He didn't. Warren Jeffs didn't marry underage girls.
No, he's in prison for facilitation of child rape.
Whatever the hell that means.
That means
he's in prison. He's in prison because he's weird and unpopular, and he has a different lifestyle that other people find creepy.
No, he's an accessory to the rape of children. That is a felony, and a serious one at that.
What do you mean an accessory? He's like got some weird religious cult where he thinks it's okay to, marry underage girls, but he didn't do it. Why wouldn't the guy who actually did it, who had sex with an underage girl, he should be the one who's doing life? I'm not defending underage marriage at all. I just don't think it's the same thing exactly as pulling a child from a bus stop and sexually assaulting that child. The rapist in this case has made a lifelong commitment to live and take care of the person. So it is a little different. I mean, let's just be honest about it.
Let's be honest about the distinctions between raping a child once and then raping a child and forcibly maintaining your control over them to rape them again. Carlson went to Twitter and did not apologize, saying Media Matters caught me saying something naughty on a radio show more than a decade ago, refused to express the, quote, usual ritual contrition. Here with me now, the president of the group that uncovered that audio of Tucker Carlson, Angela Corazon of Media Matters for America. You have new audio you have just published this evening.
Yes.
Where should we start? There's one clip in which he uses a homophobic slur.
Yep.
I think that we have that, which you've just published. Take a listen.
Tuck, do you like coming on with us? Because I like you. I mean, I'm not trying to out on you or nothing, but I like you.
Well, I like you too, and I mean that. You always say I mean that in a non way, but I actually mean it in a completely way.
I mean, I think what struck me about a lot of these clips was not just the fact that they're so consistent with the things that he says now, but the comfort in which he says it. It sounds like you're actually getting to see the real Tucker Carlson. In all of his profiles, they talk about how private he is, how he lives behind this really deep veneer, how detached he is, right? It's a strange thing. I feel like that's the real Tucker. And that's the part that struck me. There's a casualness to it that just feels that that's not the only time he said that.
Yeah, I mean, let me just say that my position on this is like the more information, the better. People should hear what, and Tucker obviously can defend himself, and he can own the things he says. Like, for instance, I hate the war. You know, I'm not defending the war in any way, but just have zero sympathy for them as a culture, meaning Iraqis, a culture where people don't use toilet paper or forks. This is him in 2008. This is after hundreds of thousands of Iraqis have been killed. If I didn't like Canada, I wouldn't consider it worth invading. I mean, Iraq is a crappy place filled with a bunch of, you know, semi-literate primitive monkeys. That's why it wasn't worth invading. I just want to say that, like, this stuff is just, you know, honestly what his views are, and they shine through generally really today, 10 years later.
And there was this point where he said that he fantasized about a candidate running for president who basically promises to eradicate all of the Muslims, almost literally forecasting the appeal that Donald Trump would actually present to that audience.
He has a long riff about how much a candidate would catch fire if they said, I'm sick of PC culture, I'm just going to basically kill a lot of Muslims.
Exactly. And I think that if you tie that with Tucker's programming today, and I think that's why you see so much of a winking and nodding, before his show even launched, we actually found his new producers going into these chat rooms and posting. So on the Donald subreddit, announcing that their program was there, saying that they wanted to be a part of it, inviting ideas, and very consistently, there's always a segment that is a top story that's on the Chans or one of these communities, because he's elevating it and giving it oxygen and airtime.
All right, this is the sort of argument, the devil's advocate argument here. Yeah. This was said 12, 13 years ago.
Yep.
During, I will note, his employment at this network. Yep. Not at Fox News.
Correct.
This was said a long time ago, and you know, you're digging this up because you don't like him anyway.
I understand why that's the case. If that was the case, if we just wanted to bombard with everything, then I would have taken a lot of the 100+ hours that we listened to of Bubba the Love Sponge and Tucker Carlson. I would have played a lot of random other clips because he said a lot of awful things that are objectionable. The reason why
so he said something you've chosen not to publish.
Tons of it. The reason why we didn't, though, is precisely because of that. Not because I'm trying to be some nice guy or give him a favor, but because I think the argument for pulling this out now is, one, because of his relationship to the president and the consumption. Two, that I think it gives some context and insight into what he does nightly on his programming. And to the extent that they enrich that understanding, I think it is worthwhile. So that's why we focused on things that he said repeatedly and thematically, and that also echo his programming today. And I think that makes it much more relevant.
There's a riff at one point about Michelle Obama acting like a, quote, sister.
Yep.
Excessively black in the estimation of both the co-host and Tucker Carlson at one point.
I think he used the characterization ghetto when he was referring to that.
And there's also the idea that Barack Obama would still be a state senator if he were white, which is one thing that's said at a certain point. So a lot of the sort of racial themes, there's a lot of railing against the Congressional Black Caucus and political correctness. The Congressional Black Caucus exists to blame the white man for everything. I'm happy to say that in public because it's true. Everyone knows it's true. That's the kind of thing that would be said on his program. Again,
these are in December, right?
These are public and consistent views. This is not revealing a thing about the man's character or views. Angela Corson, of course, all that can be found at Media Matters website, so you can listen to the full clips, get the full context is all there. Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.